We have a massive Boston Celtics sale update. As we all know, Wyc Grousbeck has went and sold the Boston Celtics, and he has given the rights to Bill Chisholm. But with Bill Chisholm coming in and with the Celtics having an absorbent luxury tax with a team that is in the second apron, how will this ultimately affect Brad Stevens and this championship squad, as it is said that they will have to cut some sales to end underneath that first apron? We'll be getting into all of that and more on this episode of Celtics Digest. I'm Bruce Velez with my co-host Patrick, as always. And Patrick, we got an interesting story to dive in and get into today, don't we?
Yeah, there's a lot to talk about. A lot of interesting things going on with the Boston Celtics, especially with the changing of ownership. But there's a lot that we got to get into, so let's get into it, man.
100%. And let's dive into it. If you guys enjoy the content, make sure to hit that subscribe button and to stay tuned because we will have that special guest on our live stream on Wednesday. So you definitely want to stay prepared for that. But Patrick, let's dive into this video at hand. Make sure to grab that snack. And like we said earlier in the introduction, this is interesting for the Boston Celtics as we see obviously them changing with these new owners. And obviously with them changing with new owners, a lot of question marks, a lot of, random thoughts are raising through these Celtics fans' heads of what the potential of this Celtics team could ultimately amount to. And we got a little bit of an update revolving around that in this episode. So we're going to look at an article which we saw from Justin Quinn, courtesy of Celtics Wire, which lets us know that the Celtics owner, Wyc Grousbeck, could be hinting his successor may have plans to cut some salary. And we saw this in an interview with the Greg Hill show, in which Wyc Grousbeck was asked about the potential changes coming to this roster. And Justin Turpin got this for us on Twitter, letting us know that it's not just the luxury tax bill, but it's the basketball penalties. The basketball penalties mean that it's even more of a premium now to have your basketball president be brilliant and lucky. And because you have to navigate, because you have to stay in the second apron, nobody will. We have Brad Stevens, the reigning executive of the year, and thank God we do. He's the one who's brought us this championship with his brilliant moves along with many other people. But Brad is at the forefront. He's going to extend our window and make it work. But even with, making that window work, there may have to be some potential cuts coming that Celtics way.
Yeah, that is the worst part about everything. You don't want to see a lot of these guys leave, but with everything going on with the second apron is something that's very new that we're seeing to the NBA, and it's a little confusing at the start because there's a lot of different things that come with the second apron as well. But I mean, I do like this quote a lot about talking about Brad and how they trust in Brad because that's been the Celtics fans' mindset for the past couple of years with Brad being that in that position, and it's just trusting Brad, whether it was losing Marcus Smart but gaining Porzingis, but also getting a ring, and just trusting all of his decisions that he's constantly been making. It's really just been the trust Brad process throughout this whole thing. So, as Celtics fans, he's going to figure it out, but it's definitely something to think about and what type of moves that they're going to have to make.
100%. And I think you kind of hit that sentiment well, Patrick. And, trusting Brad, that's been the main sentiment all Celtics have really felt since they made those big splash moves to get Kristaps Porziņģis and Jrue Holiday last summer to push for that championship. And I feel like with those recent moves, it's led for the belief for Celtics fans to continue in that trust. And we see here from Ramona Shelburne as well that Wyc Grousbeck said in his statement that even with the new Boston Celtics owner, William Chisholm, coming in, he has asked Wyc to help him run the team as the CEO and governor for the first 3 years and stay on as his partner, and he is glad to do so. And this is something we alluded to, in the initial sale reaction video that we kind of did when I alluded to, Wyc Grousbeck being that Jedi and Bill Chisholm being that Padawan, and it looking like it's going to come kind of through fruition with this Celtics team.
Yeah, I still think it's really cool that Will Chisholm wants him to be around. Especially all these different things with going into new ownership. It can be very scary for
Yep.
fans because you really don't know what you're gonna get. So
Mm-hmm.
you could really just get somebody that's going to just sell the whole team and just in there for certain reasons, like some Nico Harrison kind of allegations. So I think that's what a lot of people can be scared about. But seeing him being a fan and talking about him being a fan and wanting Wick around really just gives you a lot of hope for the Celtics, regardless of everything going on.
100%, 100%. And obviously, these kind of cuts and ties are kind of alluding to that second apron, which we kind of mentioned. So, Patrick, let's kind of get into that because not a lot of fans really understand what this second apron is or what implications it really has truly for this Celtics team. So, we're going to dive in and do a little bit of a breakdown of this second apron. And as you can see, there are obviously, restrictions within the second apron with trading. We see with the Celtics that they, can't aggregate contracts. They can't use trade exceptions after a certain year. They can't can't create more of those. They can't use cash in trades, no sign in trades with their own players. They have potential frozen first round picks if they stay in there with the draft pick penalty. They also, in free agency, have no mid level exception and no sign in trade with their own players, like I specified. But with this being known as well, there are some penalties, like I mentioned. And if a team remains in the second apron for 3 out of any 5 seasons, their first round pick is automatically moved to the end of the first round, and they lose the ability to trade their first round picks 7 years out, which would truly hinder, the Celtics if they were put in this situation. They would have some frozen assets in the future that they could not move, down the line. They'll probably be at top of the roster, so moving their pick back to 30 wouldn't be as drastic, but if they had an injury riddled season, that could be the case, and that could really hinder this Celtics team as well.
That's what makes this second apron so scary in a way. It's like you just saw a whole list of things that could happen for being in the
Hmm.
second apron. But I mean, we don't know if the Celtics are really going to be in that second apron for many years in a row. Brad will not let that happen.
Yep.
But it is definitely scary to think about all these different things that can happen just because you have all this money that you have to pay and being in that second apron. It's definitely not a spot that anybody wants to be in.
100%. And luckily, the Celtics have only been in the second apron for one of these seasons, right? So obviously, it hasn't been that 3 consecutive season yet. And even in this offseason, they won't hit that 3rd consecutive season in the second apron. For Celtics fans, for those people that are, getting concerned, it may not be right at this moment that the Celtics have to depend on cutting those costs and making those drastic moves right away or even into this offseason, but definitely something to keep out for the future. So with saying that, Patrick, let's kind of dive in and explore what could be next for this Boston Celtics team, with knowing that obviously they will eventually have to get to that first apron, maybe not this season, but potentially next season. We look at the Celtics projected roster going into next year, $230 million, Patrick. That is way over the second apron by $23 million. And if the Celtics want to get, kind of close to that first apron, they'd have to shed a little over, 35 to $40 million. Now, we know Al Horford, Torrey Craig, Luke Cornett, those guys are free agents. Horford making right around $12 million. Craig on a veteran minimum, and Luke Cornett also on, a veteran minimum contract. Torrey Craig on the buyout. So roughly right around 16K removed there from those guys, or 16 mil, excuse me. You remove that. Obviously, the Celtics still need to shave right around 30. They still could bring back Horford. He's obviously not single to retire. I think he'd be brought back on a veteran minimum. But when you look at some of these key guys and you look at this, who could be some potential names?
Well, I do think that they will bring Luke Cornett back too, so that's
Yep.
gonna add on some money as well. But I think that they look at some guys that are on the roster, like a Jrue Holiday, and being like, "Look, you want to end your career here? That's fine, but you're gonna have to take some cuts, and we're gonna have to reconstruct your contract a little bit so that we can keep some guys around. So if you want to win a championship, that's what you're gonna have to do. But that's also the point of all these first round picks that the Celtics have too, and that's why they're so important because you get a guy on a cheap contract and you have him for a couple of years, and that's what they're going to have to build off of for a little bit. But I think that Jrue Holiday would be one of those guys that's going to have to kind of do some things with his contract. But Porzingis, I guess, another name. But Tatum and Brown, I feel, aren't going anywhere as well as Derrick White.
Yeah, I think we can kind of safe to say that those 3 guys are locked down pretty sure with this Celtics team. I think you could potentially look at a Jrue Holiday, maybe a Kristaps Porziņģis, just because Porziņģis is, only having 1 year left on his deal. He also is a little bit more of an expendable contract. Holiday, obviously, making right around, 30 to $40 million. Could be one that the Celtics look to move off of as well. But I don't see, any big drastic changes, no big moves, and potentially not even this offseason, as we mentioned as well. The Celtics, like we mentioned, could still be holding on to these players and still go into this offseason with, making no massive move, big change, but some things will be happening on the horizon, as obviously the Celtics will have to shorten that tax bill in the future, as they don't want to lose those protections on their picks. They don't want to have those frozen assets in the future, and they definitely want to be able to have some flexibility with this team in the now to win, but also to continue to contend. We saw them bring back virtually everyone last year. I don't necessarily think they'll be able to bring back everyone this season once again, but I do still, in fact, to see them keep that core intact and still remain to keep pushing for the championship, even if it does hurt the pockets of Wyc Grousbeck and Bill Chisholm for now.
Yeah, I totally agree. And then we looked at that list too, also like a Torrey Craig. I don't think he's going to be there either. So it's just a couple of those guys on those expiring contracts. And I think just really talking to the players and being like, what do we want to do here? You guys can take a pay cut, or someone's going to have to get moved, and that's going to be the problem. But I trust in Brad Stevens, like the philosophy of all of us Celtics fans believe in. As scary as some of the trades might be as a fan, like losing Marcus Smart to me, it comes with a championship. So, what would you rather pick, a championship or losing a well-known player? So it's just either one.
100%. And I can speak with you on that one because that's the same sentiment that I felt when the Celtics traded Marcus Smart. And honestly, I would trade that championship in. So I am glad that that's the move that the Celtics made. And I'm sure that you are as well, Patrick. So once again, thank you guys so much for tuning in, getting to know our thoughts once again on this Celtics sale. Is obviously the news has been kind of rampant. There hasn't been much clarity around this. So we wanted to get some news, kind of breaking it down, kind of talking about it, letting you guys know kind of the future implications about this and what it has for this Boston Celtics team. As we all know, they're competing for that championship, but still want to in the future with this core of Jayson Tatum and Jaylen Brown. So they might have to make some cost-effective moves to do that in some future seasons. So let us know your thoughts down below in the comment section, what you guys ultimately think on this Celtics news, and we'll catch you guys in the next video. Have a great rest of your day, and go Boston Celtics. Peace out, everyone.